Daniel with tridprinting.com here. At this point we're going to put together the carriage. As you can see, we need the 2 plastic parts for the carriage. Along with that we'll need 4 35mm button head screws. We chose the button head over the socket head screws because they are lighter and we want this carriage to be as light as possible. We'll also use 4 lock nuts on those. We have 2 20mm screws, 1 16mm, 1 12mm, or it's actually 7 12mm screws because they go on the let's see, bearings as well. And then we have 9, I wonder if that's right, that one disappears, 10 washers, 4 nuts, and 2 jam nuts, which are thinner than the normal nuts. So what we'll do to get started here is to put in these bearings. You'll start with 1 screw, the 12mm screw. You'll add the bearing, add a washer, and now you put those into the angled screw holes. And here's where you do not want to clean the screw holes out first, because there is no nut that accompanies those screws to hold them in. Just do that. They just need to be tight, and they'll work. I've completed the other 5 bearings because it's all pretty simple and straightforward. Now what you want to do is put these 2 together, and you'll notice one side has a hex position, the other side just has a dugout hole. You'll most probably need to use a 5.5mm drill head to just scrape out these holes and clean them out. And you actually may find that that works pretty good for scraping out the hex side as well. Once you've got that, you can go through with these and clean them out with a 3mm drill. And in this case I've attached it to a tool to make it easier on my fingers. You put these 2 together like this so the arms are on the same side, and then start putting in the 35mm screws. So we're to the point here where things get a little bit tricky. You'll want to really clean out the hex side screw holes, because what you want to be able to do is get or pull in these nuts and capture them in the plastic, these nylock nuts. We can see if we can do that here. Looks like we get it. Real easy. And you just want to align these with the position of the hex. Let's see, the hex cutout in the plastic, and then tighten them down and in until they get captured in the plastic. And the trick with that is you tighten them in fairly far until they're tight, and then you loosen them back up a little bit. So now we'll continue with the next one. And this just takes a little bit of patience. But it's nice once they get captured in the plastic, because now you can just leave them and they're all set. Loosen up a little bit. We'll give it a try. So now that you've got these all tight and you've got the lock nuts, or the nylocks, captured, pull them out and make them loose. One of the tricks to using the beam version of the Castle printer is that you want to have the absolute minimum amount of tension on these wheels as you can, because if you have too much, it'll destroy the aluminum extrusions. So here we can start with that nice and loose. Okay, so now we've finished putting in all 4 of these screws. what you're going to want to do is get this fairly loose. Put this around an extrusion. That just fits in like so. And then tighten it up just barely tighter than it needs to be, or just tight enough to get it to stop playing. As you can see here, we've got quite a bit of play, so we'll give like a quarter turn to each of the 4 nuts. And still have some play, so another quarter turn. And now suddenly the play is gone. That's all the tighter we want it to be, actually. We might even want to just loosen it up just a tiny bit on one side here. And you just want it barely touching enough so that it doesn't have play. But you don't need to have it pressing at all. So now that we're finished with that, we'll put the extrusion away. And it's time to put on the Traxxas ball joints. At this point, you should have 2 20mm screws for the ball joints, 1 16mm screw for the set or the height screw, and 1 12mm screw for the front for the string connection. We'll also have just 2 spare washers in case you need them, 2 full-size nuts, and then 4 jam nuts. Let's start with a 20mm screw, put on the Traxxas piece, and put on a jam nut. In this case, we'll want to really tighten up this jam nut and get that to hold in tight. So we'll take a little wrench, give it a good twist. Now, before we go with too much more stuff, let's actually bring in the, or I'll call it suck in the nuts into the plastic here on this, and they just need to be aligned correctly before you start pulling it in too strongly. There we go, and just get that all the way in and bring it back out. Let's do it to the other side. So stick that in, get it aligned, and then pull it all the way in and reverse back out. Now what we'll do is offer a second jam nut, and by having these 2 jam nuts here, we can adjust the position of this second nut and thereby get just a little bit of positioning play on the spacing between these 2 nuts. But we'll start with the minimum spacing here, which has the 2 nuts essentially touching. Now we just push that in, go, and we'll go till we're tight. Start back over with the second one, the Traxxas joint, jam nut, tighten that on nice and tight, put on the second jam nut. Now jam nuts are just the thin regular nuts. And put that in the second position here. So here the part is done. We've got it adjusted so it's the right distance apart. Now what we want to do is take a caliper and measure the distance between these 2, because we'll want the distance between these 2 and the 2 on the carriage to be exactly the same. In this case, as it's coming off, it's 61 1/10 of a millimeter. So that's it for the carriage. 2 more to go.